Hey guys, welcome. This is actually going to be Module 1, Course 5, Managing Financial Resources. And we'll give everyone a couple more minutes to get into the session and we'll get started. So I'm having some audio problems, but I should be fine. If for some reason you guys can't hear me, just let me know. Thank you, Susan. Good to know. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to Region 5 CHFP Lunch and Learn. Just kind of a quick, if you will, recap of what we've been going through. Everyone should have the Business of Healthcare Key Concepts Guide. We've gone through Module 1, Course 1, the big picture. Course 2, Financial Accounting Principles. Course 3, Cost Accounting Principles. And Course 4, Strategic Financial Issues. And today we're going to go through Managing Financial Resources, which is one of my favorite chapters because basically it deals with revenue cycle. And for me studying this, coming from revenue cycle, one of the two hardest courses I had was the Financial Accounting Principles and Cost Accounting Principles. So my recommendation there, if you're not very strong in accounting, those are the two best courses to study and get ready for the exam. So I think we're ready to get started, Lynn. All right, let's go and get started. So like I said, today is Module 1, the Business of Healthcare, Managing Financial Resources. And again, Christine and I have basically kind of harped on it, if you will. If you have a chance, please go out to the HFMA website and do the online courses. I know I heard from a couple of you this morning that you've been doing that, which is a great exercise, and it kind of ties in with what we do here. So learning objectives. After you complete this model, you should be able to describe how healthcare providers are reimbursed for services, recognize the types of reimbursement methods used in the healthcare industry, describe the processes by which a hospital or physician clinic bills insurers, calculate metrics used to manage the revenue cycle, name resource management issues in a healthcare business, and recognize the methods that healthcare businesses finance receivables and acquire capital equipment. Purpose of the chapter learning is highlight key knowledge for strong job performance, provide an overview of important concepts. The in-depth presentation is an online course. Again, this is primarily going to focus on the revenue cycle, which those who are of us who are in the revenue cycle, it'll probably be one of our better courses, if you will. The patient portion. Insurers generally require some out-of-pocket payment by the patient to supplement the insurance payment. Insurers generally require some out-of-pocket payment by the patient to supplement the insurance payment, usually an incentive for the patient to use insurance only when needed. The types of out-of-pocket payments required are deductible, co-payment, and co-insurance. The deductible is a predetermined amount that the patient pays before the insurer begins to pay for services. Co-insurance is a percentage of the insurance payment amount paid by the patient, along with the amount paid by the insurer. A co-payment is a flat amount that the patient pays at each time of service. It is important to remember that the patient is ultimately responsible for payment of services to a physician or hospital. A contract between an insurer and a provider may limit the ability for the provider to collect from a patient for denial of payment for covered benefits. However, the patient may have to pay a provider for any services not determined to be covered benefit under the patient contract with the insured. Paying physicians or healthcare facilities for services. Reimbursement is an older term used to describe payment by an insurer to a hospital or a physician. This term is used because a physician or hospital provider will render services to a patient and then submit a claim to the insurer. The healthcare facility or physician waits for processing of that claim by the insurer and ultimately receives a payment, a determination of pay or denial by the insurer. Today, it is more common to use the term payment instead of reimbursement. Accounts receivable or AR. The time span between submitting a claim and receiving payment can represent a financial challenge to a hospital or physician. The average time it takes for a physician or hospital to be paid for services by a health plan is measured by the days in accounts receivable or by the days in AR ratio. And one key thing that was actually updated this year, it went from 45 to 53, but the days in AR receivable, the HFMA average is 53 days. Again, the days in accounts receivable ratio for HFMA, the average is 53 days. The physician or hospital is already paid for the resources needed in providing service to the patient, such as salaries or invoices for medicines and supplies. Therefore, any delay in receiving reimbursement for those costs from an insurer or patient can threaten the financial health of the hospital or physician entity. Next, we're looking at a copy of the charge master. A physician or hospital will set prices for services based on an analysis of operating expenses and expected income. The price set by a hospital or physician for their services is referred to as charges or bill charges. The charges by a hospital or physician represent the retail price and are usually compiled in a price listing known as a charge master. The actual payment received from an insurer, net of any discount, is referred to as net revenue. Next, let's look at payment for healthcare receivables. There are two broad categories of payment for healthcare services. They are fee-for-service and capitation. Each type of payment may have different methods of structuring the payment to the provider. Each variation in a way that the provider is reimbursed creates different business incentives and risks for both providers and health plans. The figure on the slide summarizes methods of payment for each category. The oldest and simplest fee-for-service reimbursement mechanism is charge-based reimbursement. This payment system was widely used in the early days of commercial insurance. The hospital or physician is paid based on billed charges or a percentage discounted charges. In circumstances where charge-based fees are used, healthcare plans are now calling for the amount to be paid to be defined in a part of the contract known as a fee schedule, and for charge increases to be limited by the contract. So if you kind of look at the slide a little bit more, under fee-for-service, you have cost-based reimbursement, charge-based reimbursement, and then if you look at the prospective payment, you have DRG, APC, RBRVS for physicians, case rates, per diem, and bundled payment. PPS or prospective payment systems is going to be the DRGs, diagnostic related groups, ambulatory payment classifications or APCs, resource-based relative value scales, RBRVS, primary procedure rate. There are four types of prospective payments commonly used in today's healthcare market. A payment based on the patient's diagnosis is known as a DRG or diagnosis-related group payment. DRGs are most commonly used in payments to hospital. A DRG is a classification of a disease or injury into one of the approximately 700 different categories, and we know that's all changed. But again, study from your material. A disease or injury into one of the approximate 750 categories in an effort to simplify the payment structure for hospitals and physicians. A per procedure payment mechanism may be preferable. Two per procedure payment approaches are used. Hospitals are based on the ambulatory payment classification, or APC, which is similar to the inpatient DRG. So again, if we look at ambulatory payment, we look at APCs, or ambulatory payment classification. If we look at DRGs, which is hospital-based, it's diagnostic-related groups. Physicians are paid in a similar manner using the RBRVS scale, which is resource-based relative value scale. Under the RBRVS, the physician payment for the procedure or service varies on the amount of resources, usually time and effort, needed by the physician. If the patient receives multiple procedures during one occasion of service, then the patient record is analyzed to determine the primary procedure that was performed, and the procedure is paid at the full per procedure rate. An either simpler method of prospective payment is known as the per diem or per day payment system, which is primarily used for reimbursements to hospitals or long-term care facilities. As the name implies, the health plan reimburses a facility a fixed amount per day for care to a patient. As with the per procedure method, the per diem payment is administratively easy for the health plan and provides a predictable payment rate that is useful in setting competitive premium rates. Payment under the ACA. The incentive for the hospital is to limit services, while the incentive for the physician is to provide more services. The advent of the value-based payment is a step towards aligning the incentives of hospitals and physicians and reducing the sources of this conflict. One form of value-based payment is bundle payment, in which the health plan pays for a single prospective rate for all services provided by both physician and hospital, and the provider entities which divide the payment amongst themselves. So again, it's important to know that the bundle payment basically covers the rate for the physician and the hospital when we're talking about studying for the CHFP. Capitation. The other common type of reimbursement is known as capitation. In many respects, capitation is the exact opposite of fee-for-service payment. Capitation pays a fixed amount per person per month to a provider in advance as payment for all services necessary to that patient. A capitation payment amount is normally expressed in the amount of per member per month, or PMPM. Capitation is most common in relationships between primary care physicians and managed care plans, such as health maintenance organizations, HMOs. However, capitation is also used for services from specialty services and some facilities. Capitation is sometimes referred to a risk transfer mechanism, where the cost of care to a select group of patients is transferred from the health plan to the provider entity. And one thing to remember about capitation, it's always paid at the first of the month, and it's up to the physicians. I know in some cases we've actually had lab charges have been capitated, but basically to manage that PM per month to make sure that, one, the costs are not outrageous, but secondly, just to make sure that costs are in line with what we signed with the contract. This is a little busy, but actually it's a good slide. It kind of summarizes the reimbursement risk and incentives. So if you go on the far left to the providers, and then you start going up to the top. So the lowest financial risk is, going to be cost-based, charge-based, or DRG for providers. And of course, the highest financial risk in this particular slide is going to be capitation. There, again, getting back to capitation, where pretty much those monies come in at the first of the month, and it's up to the providers to pretty much manage that reimbursement to make sure that the costs are actually in line with the reimbursement. But generally speaking, prospective payment methods or capitation create a risk for providers and hospitals. These methods also change some of the ways that a health plan would manage the risk of healthcare costs. The summary of the incentives and risks of the types of reimbursement is shown in the figure above. As long as both parties have a solid understanding of the risk they undertake with prospective payment arrangements. A business relationship based on this type of payment can be mutually beneficial, yielding a reasonable income for both health plan and provider. So let's talk about a little bit about the actual revenue cycle process, or the billing and collection process in healthcare. We have a pre-visit activities, we have during visit activities, and post-visit activities. The next couple of slides will be great to study from as far as knowing, the pre, post, and during. It'll kind of give you an outline on each one of the slides on what's encompassed within these three activities. So let's start with the pre-visit revenue cycle activities. That's going to include patient scheduling, eligibility verification and pre-certification, registration, and point of service collections. These pre-visit activities are intended to facilitate the gathering of information necessary for serving the patient during the visit and billing and collection for the services after the visit. Approximately 60% of all information needed to serve the patient during the visit and bill for services is collected before services are provided. It is essential that managers pay particular attention to the accuracy of data gathering, processing at these early stages of a patient visit. Next, let's look at during the patient visit. Provide care to the patient, document care to the patient, utilization review, charge capture, discharge, and medical record completion. So one thing too, I did look at, was helping someone with a question they got back from one of the exams. I know that a lot of people say that medical record completions is at the end of the revenue cycle, but actually keep in mind it's during the patient visit. Once the patient is registered, a medical record should be prepared for documenting the services provided to the patient and the findings regarding the patient's medical condition. Data from the medical record can also be used to support any additional utilization review, requirements of the health plan, such as certification for additional days or demonstration of the need for additional surgical procedures. At the same time, documenting services in the medical record may assist staff in completing charge capture, where the initial items making up the total charges on a patient account are compiled. The items added to a patient account at a charge capture are recorded at the charge master price so that the compiled claim is prepared using billed charges. It's always a good practice to verify the charges on the patient account against the data in the medical record to verify that the items claimed for the payment were documented as provided to the patient. Ideally, this was be done at the time the patient visit ends at discharge. Also, any information needed for medical record completion would be gathered in the final phase of this process. So let's look at the final phase, which is post patient visit or revenue cycle activities. It's going to include the medical record analysis and coding, billing, payment processing, account closure, payment posting and follow-up, and of course, denial management. Once the patient has been discharged from the physician or hospital's care, the process goes into gathering data to using that data to compile a claim for reimbursement. The time between discharge of the patient and the submission of claim to a health plan is known as the discharge but not final bill. A lot of us call that DNFB. Ideally, the patient record should be completed at the time of discharge or as quickly as possible thereafter. depending on the nature of services provided to the patient. Review all documentation contained in the medical record to prepare a final summary of care provided to the patient for use in the billing process. Preparation of this document is known as the discharge summary and is a common point of delay in the completion of the process. All right, so we kind of gone through the revenue cycle, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about working capital management. It is also critical for attention to be paid to the amount of cash on hand and the use of cash while the provider awaits reimbursement for services. The difference between assets, cash, receivables, and inventory, and the current liabilities, which would be salaries, payable, and accounts payable, is referred to as working capital. So one more time, the difference between current assets, cash, receivables, and inventory, and current liabilities, which would be salaries and accounts payable, is referred to as working capital. Essentially, working capital management entails collecting receivables as quickly as possible while making payments for salaries and other expenses on the day due and not before. A common metrics for monitoring inventory is the days in inventory ratio. Hospitals use this ratio frequently, as do physician clinics, and it may not be relevant to a small physician office or health plan that maintains only a minimum inventory. Days in payable is also an important tool. The health plan has a large amount of payables on hand in terms of claims awaiting adjudication. Health plan managers must be sure that they are timely paying invoices presented for payment. This is equally true for a physician clinic or hospital purchasing supplies on trade credit. Timely payments are essential to maintain the access to trade credit, which allows the hospital or clinic to finance supplies used and provide care. Additional financial resources: short-term, accounts payable, line of credit. Long-term or longer term is going to be mortgage or bonded and lease. Short-term sources of financing entail different forms of credit. The most common form of short-term debt in a healthcare organization is known as accounts payable. So keep in mind, accounts payable is a form of short-term debt in a healthcare organization. Accounts payable are a form of trade credit where a supplier delivers goods to a buyer but delays collection on those supplies for a short time, usually about 30 days. This delay in payment for supplies is a form of debit and can free up cash for other uses, such as payment of salaries. Some businesses acquire short-term debt, although a line of credit with their bank. A line of credit is like a credit card through which the organization can draw funds as needed to meet immediate cash needs. Long-term debt is almost secured. Long-term debt is almost always secured with some asset of the business as a collateral for the debt. The debt usually is in the form of a mortgage or bond issue. A longer-term rental agreement is referred to as a lease. A lease may be structured as either an operating lease or a capital lease. An operating lease essentially is a long-term rental of facilities or equipment. A capital lease is similar in many aspects to a mortgage that the lessee makes a fixed monthly payment for the use of the asset. So with that being said, that pretty much concludes our session for managing financial resources. So we can definitely open it up to questions at this time. Lynn and Christine, are you guys seeing any questions coming in?
I am not, John. I was just getting myself off mute to tell you that. So just looked in chat and Q&A and not seeing anything so far.
Okay. Okay, guys. So like I said, we've gone through this session. Next week, Christine will be going over course 6, looking to the future. You guys have our emails if you need any of the courses that we've gone over. If you need the business of healthcare key concept guides, if you have any questions, whatever we can help you with, we're here. So,
Hey, John, we did get one question.
okay.
Can you give some examples of how long-term leases, capital or operating leases are used?
Long-term capital or operating leases are used.
What types of items fall under those leases?
What I'll do is I'll have Lynn send out that question to the group just to make sure I kind of stay on point with our presentations for this particular module. So let me do that and we'll get something out within 24 hours.
Will there be any questions on AI? I'm not sure if it's supposed to be from or for revenue cycle. I'm not really sure if I understand the question.
Yeah, I was going to say.
If anybody wants to either clarify, certainly feel free to get off mute and ask any questions live as well. I'm not sure if that means artificial intelligence, since that tends to be the hot topic in Rev Cycle right now, but AI is popular, yeah.
Yeah, so Lynn, I know you've been going through these modules. Have you seen anything related to AI?
I have not. No, not at all, actually. It's mainly any type of reference to systems and equipment, and they are just kind of general. There's nothing about AI at all that I've seen so far. And I did finish this particular course last night. So I would say no.
Well, it's like Christine said, this is relatively new. This kind of came on the marketplace really if you kind of look the past 2 or 3 years. And I think this material is probably about 5 or 6 years old. So
yeah, I would think so too. I believe they are working on an update on that, but and if anything happens prior to you're taking the test, we'll certainly have those updates. HFMA should be sending those updates, but you should, as John said, study from the material at this point in time.
and just so you guys know, Christine and I are in touch real frequently with the association, or national, if you will. And, you know, we actually get updates or revise if there's going to be any updates from Shirley, even, who's actually at national. So between her and I, you know, getting those updates, we definitely will let you guys know. And another one, the most recent one for me was the days in AR being at 53. And previously, I know on the exam it was a question, and the study material, if you will, was days at 45, but now that's at 53 for days in AR.
Just real quick on the question on capital and operating leases. They go into a whole section on long-term debt in the online course for this particular course. If you take a look at that, it will go through a whole lot more detail and provide you with more detail on it and what types of items would apply there. So it's really, really beneficial to do the online course and not
Thanks, Lynn. And that's how come I really didn't want to answer it, because I wasn't sure what that material looked like. So thanks. Because again, what we apply day to day sometimes is not going to apply on the exam. Again, it's study from the material that we have, and, you know, study from the material on online courses. But I know the material that Christine and I are presenting, it pretty much, I know Christine and I both go back and check the online courses to make sure our slides are up to date. And I know Christine has done massive updating on some of her presentations. I've done some updating on mine with the help of Lynn. So we're trying to get as much as that information that we can to you, but at the same time, those online courses are valuable, especially in the study process.
So there was an off-topic question. I don't know if you saw the Q&A. I had stepped away for a minute about National AI this year, the national conference. Is if they're going to have one. As of now, John, the last I heard is that we are scheduled to go to Minneapolis in November of 2021 is the last I've still heard.
Yeah,
Right, that's my understanding. And let me see what I have on my calendar. I can tell you guys when I have it. But I do know it's in November, and I
Right.
do know it's in
Minneapolis. Why?
November 8th to the 10th.
Yep, and as far I know, just for you guys, and Christine, I think you guys are having a live event in Florida, but I know Georgia, the first week of May, is having our live event in Callaway Gardens. And I don't mean to speak for you, Christine, but I think you guys are like the second or third week in May in Tampa live, right?
We are. Yes, I don't really have the dates right off of me. I'm actually getting registered to register today. But we are in Tampa in May as well, live. Correct.
And I know for the Georgia HFMA members, we'll be doing, I'll actually be at Callaway Gardens, and we'll be doing a CHFP overview, CRCR overview of, you know, and the courses offered through HFMA during that time frame while you're there. So by all means, stop by, introduce yourself. And like I said, that's scheduled, I think, on Wednesday. Yeah, I think Wednesday, May the 5th. So again, if you're a Georgia HFMA member or any HFMA member and you're coming to Callaway Gardens, like I said, Georgia HFMA will be live May 5th through the 7th at Callaway Gardens. Lynn, are we seeing any more questions?
Brad added that the Tennessee is May 19th, 20th, and 21st, and they are also doing live as well as virtual. I think that the national is as well.
Yeah, I've actually got that on my calendar. So I guess what I'm getting at, the live events are starting to open back up. So I know for me personally, I get my second vaccine next Tuesday. So hopefully after 14 days after that, I'll be good to go. But little by little, I mean, things are really starting to open up. Georgia has a CPAR banquet. We're planning on having that in May. For those of you who don't know, CPAR, Certified Patient Account Representative in the state of Georgia, is a statewide program basically supported and done by Georgia HFMA, and we usually have about 100, 150 pass that exam every year. So we're excited about having that banquet in May. So a lot of things are really starting to open up and happening when it comes to HFMA. More questions?
No, not so far, but every time I say that, one jumps in there. Okay.
So the other thing that I did want to mention is I sent out that key concepts guide to everyone. And I don't know that we've really touched on it too much during each of the sessions, but there are a lot of exercises in there as well, homework, if you will, that does help to remember a lot of those concepts and even some of the formulas, because there's going to be some calculating to do on the test. That much you can see when you're doing the online course. So it's a good exercise just to go through those things to remember, help you remember terms. There's all different types of exercises in there. So I would highly recommend doing that as well.
Yeah, so if you, I would recommend going in and doing the questions at the first of the guide. And then starting on 51 is the answer key. So it's a great self-paced, self-study guide that you can actually use. But in addition, definitely go online to HFMA and do those questions also. And again, it's okay if you go out there and take it and you don't pass, that's okay. You know, at least remember what, you know, what your weakest was, and then that's what you can focus on. So, and then if you know, there's some areas you're not strong on and you need, you know, any information from this group or anything, let us know and we'll get it out to you.
So Susan asked, where are the exercises? We have them. Did you receive the key concepts guide? Because the exercises are kind of scattered through that whole PDF.
So yeah, so this is kind of what it looks like. It may be backwards, but anyhow, that's kind of what the key concept guide looks like. And you know, I still refer to this even doing our presentations because there's always information there that I can use. So, but yeah, and then like I said, I think on page 50 or something like that, actually 51 is the answer key. So.
Okay, we also have, I took the course a while ago. Should I run through the course a second time to prepare for part 2? She passed the first time, and does she need to retake the test?
How long ago was it when you took the exam for module 1?
The name just a year, about a year.
You should be good. I would go ahead and log in and take module 2. You should be good.
Yeah, it won't let you take module 2 if there's not recording that you have module 1 passed first. But if you need a refresher, the key concept guides will be helpful for, I think, module 2 if you've already got a good grasp on, you know, if you passed module 1. It's just applying all that stuff to different case studies. So I would take a look at that.
For me, all this gets overwhelming, or it did for me. So with the key concept guide, you know, doing what we're doing here every week, the key concept guide kind of became a study guide. So that was the biggest help for me. You know the terms, you know the acronyms. It's just one of those things. If you know that information, it's going to make module 1 a lot easier. And I've said this before, once you pass module 1, I would jump right into module 2, because what you learn in module 2, you apply in module 1.
Let's see, do we have any more? It doesn't look like we have anything else right now.
More questions?
No, it doesn't look like it.
We good on the Q&A?
Yeah. Nothing new. Oh, would you send me the information on how to access the modules? Susan, when you sign into hfma.org and go into My e-learning, you will see, and if my internet would move a little faster, I could tell you exactly. I think it's courses. Yeah. There's a little box that says content type. Go under course, and it is HFMA Business of Healthcare for CME 2021. It should, well, on mine, it's the very first one you see. And we have another question. Does anyone do study group away from these classes? Do we know of anybody in any of the other chapters?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Does anyone do study group outside of these sessions?
And and I don't know about Christine's schedule, but I'm a little flexible until May. So if you guys, are doing independent study sessions and, and again, I'm not speaking for Christine, but with maybe like Christine or I to help you out in one of those sessions, we'll be glad to do it. And I mean, for me, I can set the call up for us and, we can just jump on for about 30 minutes and go over any key items or help you guys out any way we can.
Yeah, I'm available, John, as long as I can know in advance when we need them.
Yeah, me
I'll
too.
jump
Me
on.
too.
Yeah.
I don't mean to keep volunteering you, Christine, but
Yes,
yeah.
you do. We're good.
And also, and I'm going to bring it up in our Georgia chapter, Lynn's out of New Jersey, and they're offering, and you guys may have seen it, I haven't, but for CRCR and CHFP certifications.
No, I don't think it's CRCR, John. I think it's only FHFMA, CPAM, and
CHFP.
CHFP. Yeah,
Yeah.
get it. There's
Go
a
ahead,
discount.
Yeah, you get
The New Jersey chapter is offering a discount on. There's not that many activities up on the site yet, but they have a women's education seminar that they have every year, and normally it's $135 for members. But if you have one of those three or any of those three certifications, there's a $35 discount. So I mean, that's an incentive for people to get certified if they think they're going to get a discount on some of these, because $35 is a lot if you're talking about multiple events to save.
And also along that line with the CHFP, once you've been a CHFP for 5 years, there's actually that's the only exam within HFMA now that enables you for fellowship after 5 years. There's a couple of other qualifications there. I think one of them is education, and I forget what the other one is. But there again, if you're looking at a career path, CHFP is definitely something you need to pursue. More questions?
I do not see any.
We cleaned out in the chat.
Yep, looks like we got everything. Susan, was that explanation good on how to access the modules, or do you still want me to email you something?
Hey, Lynn, if you don't mind for the team here, can you just do something like a snapshot and send it out, just send it out to the group?
Yeah, I will do that.
Because if you guys are like me, if I have a picture, I'm much better off than taking directions. So. Okay. Christine, you have anything for the group?
I do not, just happy studying.
Yep. Lynn?
I do not either.
All right, you guys, appreciate you spending our lunch with us. I hope this is helpful. Anytime between the sessions, you need additional information or we can help you with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for.
Talk to y'all next week.
Have
Thanks,
a great
everyone.
week.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.